Good morning, everybody. It's Marty, the JavaScript party. Rhett is in the living room. She's feisty this morning. She's out there whistling. I don't know if you can hear her, but my daughter-in-law will be bringing her dogs over here shortly, within the next few minutes, and so gets a little chaotic in here. So we'll just let that. And actually, the more I think about it, the more I think she really enjoys. Um, the whole concept of being in the living room when all the festivities and stuff happen, as those dogs didn't get it come in here and just run around and go crazy and stuff. But anyways, we are working on trying to basically suss out. Okay, so like from 30,000 feet, we're working on update. And as I was working on an update, it became very clear that I have like severe problems with memory leaks. And so I've been working through that. And so we've had to go like rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole, sort of figuring things out and all that. And that's what we've been doing. And then I realized that, okay, while I did do a really good job of getting like all my entities where I could see them all, I did not do a very good job of managing my ThreeJS references. So I keep references to ThreeJS things, and I did not do that. Um, so like the easiest thing in the world, probably like just or yeah, the easiest is to like just keep expanding my data layout object component. But and because that's what all of this was, it was in this one component. But the problem is that as things are expanding, we need to probably break them down so that they don't just sort of just get completely where it's just absolutely impossible to reason about the the objects because there's so many of them. I did make the decision to split out the filter from the table itself. And so now we have a filter up here and all that. And one of the holes I realized, or probably a mistake, was that I deeply coupled this filter to this table. So basically, if you type in REND, it filters out this. Um, but that's like a directly updating something on in the TypeScript for that component. But really, what I would prefer to do is communicate between two separate components, just so I can um, have um, fewer. What am I trying to say? Oh, just so that I can sort of have less of a so I can kind of constrain growth, I guess is what I'm trying to do. I want to constrain the code count inside um, of these, but so that's why I split it out. Now, normally when people split things out, the most compelling reason is because you want to be able to reuse. It's like a reusability kind of thing. But in this specific situation, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to constrain just the ability for things to grow so that things can stay more focused and be more able to like sort of reason about and come up to speed when you're working on it. But anyway, so that means that I needed a way to talk between this filter um, and this table, and it's very limited. It's only really from this filter to this table. So I decided to create a service in between there. Now, so in Angular, we kind of just call classes services, but I think the thing that a service will have is it'll have this, it's gets this decorator, this injectable decorator. And I don't know if this needs to be provided in root. Um, I think that maybe I don't want it to be provided in root, but I'm not exactly sure on that. One day we'll have to dig in and play around and get a better understanding of what it would mean to not have injectable but not provided in root. I think my guess is that that would mean that only the things it injected, or I guess if it wasn't provided in root, I would have to create a module, and then that module would sit here, and then that module would kind of tie these three things together. But anyways, so in my filter, I want to have like a signal that goes across. And the biggest reason I like to use signals is because it's the newest thing that Angular did, and it's just really well done right. You don't get the weird object change before it can be updated on the screen or any of that stuff. If you can just use the signals directly in the template, um, and just leave the TypeScript part out of it, the component specific TypeScript. So that is always nice, but basically I need to create a signal, and it needs to be a writable signal that goes between this filter that this filter publishes from and that this entity table has subscribed to. Um, and I wish they'd used those words like publish and subscribe, but they use the word set and then effect inside of an effect, and that's a bit complicated too. Um, but for now, let's just go ahead and create a signal. And I always try to do things from memory. I know that if we want to do it, the last time I tried to do that, I needed this writable signal interface. And what I needed to do is I needed to create this signal. So let's see, table filter signal, right? And I guess, yeah, entity. Mm, yeah, we don't, it's so weird that we don't put like const or let in there. Entity filter value. And that's of type writable signal. And it's, I think they call this a generic, but I'm going to tell it that it has to be a string. And then they have a function, and it's called signal. Okay, so now once we get past two, I always do this. I always put these on two different lines. And then I usually try to get rid of the little white space that would get left there just because I've worked on some um, um, with some linters that will hit you for having like a white space like that. So just like a habit that I picked up. Signal, and then I think we say new, and then we can do a generic here as well. I think that's the right way to say that. Do a generic. I don't know. And then we make like that, and then we give it a string. What did I do? A signal. Single. New signal. New signal. Writable signal. I don't know what I did wrong here. So it's saying that I am making it a by default an any. What if it provides a little fix for me? Fix. Nothing. All right. I don't know exactly what I'm doing wrong here. Let's see, that's any type. New signal. Okay, so we do a ton of signals. So let's go ahead and just go to one of my higher up services. And I think I have a services. Yeah. So geometry service. Oh, that's inside of three. I don't think we have any signals there. Can't even remember. Do we have a signal up here? So, okay, so recyclable sequence service, I'm pretty sure has a signal in it. So let's go to definition. Debounce service, inject, inject. What in the world? It's so wild that I don't. All right, let's do this. Type in signal. Oh, publisher service should definitely have a signal, but that wasn't the publisher signal service. But ratio signal, go to definition. Signal. Yeah, see that is very similar to how I did that. But I didn't strongly type that. That shouldn't matter though. All right. New signal. Oh, we didn't put new. We don't have to put new apparently. And that's, yeah, I guess the capital letter should have been an indicator of that because this is a function that we're calling. I don't, yeah, instead of saying creating a new object, we're calling a function called signal. Let's see, so now we have our entity filter signal, and then I'm just going to name this thing publish. I don't know if this name's going to survive. Publish filter change. And this thing accepts a string. So I'm kind of having a problem because I'm flipping back and forth between C# and types and Angular TypeScript. Um, in there, I believe you tell it what it is first, and then the name of the variable. Um, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyways, value. And it's going to return a Boolean because this one I'm doing unit tests on. And unit tests are a lot easier when you get a value back. Or at least they read a lot nicer. And so it's this dot entity filter value dot set and then filter value. So basically it's just this is the equivalent of publishing, right? I wonder if there's a publish. Publish. Here we go. Publish the filter value. All right, so now let's go back to this view here and let's go into our filter and let's inject our entity service. We're going to inject into our filter, which definitely is safe. It's a very safe behavior. We don't have to worry about any kind of issues. So, and yeah, we want to inject it. I don't think we want to, yeah, I don't think we probably want to deal with it inside of the effect. I think all we want to do is handle it in here directly. I think that's what we want to do. Not 100% sure on that. Entity service, colon, entity service. Make this a little e. Doesn't have to be a little e, but it definitely is a lot easier on everybody around you if you just name it with a little e. Entity service. And then we want to bring it in. We want to kind of pay attention here. Yep, that looks tough. Sometimes it'll just bring it in without you saying it, and then sometimes it'll bring it in without you saying it, and it'll bring it from the wrong place. So you want to kind of keep a little bit of an eye on that. You know, it's a very rare thing, but when it does happen, it is a real pain. And so even if it only happens 100 times, if you catch it before it breaks, it probably is a time saver for you. All right, so now we have our entity service, right? So when we change this, instead of applying the user filter, we want to call our entity service and publish it. Event. So apparently event is not a string. Oh, it's maybe dollar $event. What was it before? Okay, so filter value. Okay, let's try that. There we go. And this is the point where I definitely like to have these things on different lines too, because man, getting a get conflict inside of there is just a mind bender. You just kind of have to stop everything and go and just think about it. Uh-oh. I So I've never done this before. I've never seen this before, but we actually have this thing has two values. I'm wondering if that dollar input came from like a copy and paste from Angular material. That would not surprise me. All right, now, did we not save? We did not save. All right. Now we're publishing. Anytime anything changes, we shouldn't see anything because nobody's listening. So in our entity table, let's go ahead and pull in our entity service. There we go. And we'll put this, we'll just make sure this is coming from something, yeah, that makes sense. And then make sure that's coming in from Angular core. And since it's only the second thing, it doesn't, by default, it just kind of stays with whatever you're doing. So like if you don't have it on multiple lines, it'll leave it all in one line. But if you do have it in multiple lines, it will bring it in multiple lines. Don't know. That's probably code in the IDE that handles that, I would guess. Not 100% sure on that. All right, so now we have our entity service, and so let's take this from our entity service. Dot. Okay, I thought this was, what was the name of this? Entity filter value. This little back button there. And what we should see is that whatever we type in here start to, yeah, so that's good. So we got that all wired up, right? So the next, and this is all wired up, right? So the next step would be to pull this table code out of the parent. So basically all of this stuff out of the parent. And then right now the data source is set at the parent. I don't know. It seems like maybe that should be an input. Probably should be an input. The thing, well, no, probably not. It probably needs to be. That's so hard. Um, yeah, this is actually going to be really tricky. Because It'd be nice if it was an input, but then we would have to handle all that sort of logic of filtering and all that at the parent level, and I'd really rather handle that at the table level. But if we're going to do that, then that means we got to wire this directly to a variable that's on the screen, that's in the TypeScript, and things get weird on that. I mean, I guess we could handle all that. I guess it makes sense to handle all that filtering now that I think about it, maybe in the entity service. So this is literally just going off of a data source that's from the entity service, that's published from the entity service. That might be the better approach to do. I'm actually having a hard time because I'm thinking, okay, so we do want like the actual data itself is one thing, and then the manipulation of the data is another thing. And it seems like all the code that manipulates the data probably should live in the service. But the data itself should, yeah. But if all that, yeah, so if entity service is going to handle providing and all that, the data, then yeah, let's do that. Let's do it that way. I hope that makes sense. But data source, so we know we're going to have these all records. So all records is definitely going to live inside of the service, right? To the service. I'm just going to say table records. Come over here. So basically we have our list of table records here. The table probably does not even know what these are, right? So we probably should rename this to something else, but for now we're gonna do that. So table records, and then, wait, am I in the right place? Nope, I'm in the wrong place. This is not where table records go. Silly rabbit. So these are our table records, right? That's what they are. Now, what's hard about this is that we actually need this to actually change. Well, I guess we don't. Maybe we don't. Okay. So table records is just an array, and then we're going to say filtered records, table records, right? Like the actual whole table doesn't need to know what all of them are. And it's a writable signal, and instead of throwing off a string, instead of publishing a string, it actually publishes an array like this. But it's just the filtered ones, not all of them. Equals signal. All right, so we're just giving it an empty array to begin with, and then we know it is an array of. So it's tricky, right? Because this is different. This is publishing a string. So if the string changes, it's going to notice it because strings are primitives. So it's going to easily understand that it needs to publish this string. But here, this is an array, which is not. It doesn't actually send the whole array. It sends a reference to the array. So that means that it's not going to be very easy for it to tell if there's changes. So that means we're going to have to send a whole new array every time, a new reference. Not, I guess we don't even need to create a new array. We just need a new reference. So like an array, the array itself is like the bookshelf, and then the objects in the array are the books. And Angular has a difficult time telling if you added or removed or changed a book in the bookshelf. But it can tell if you give it a whole new bookshelf. But the books can be the exact same books, which is weird because that's where it sort of deviates from our lived experience, right? I've been talking to ChatGPT a lot, and it says this concept of the lived experience, which is a bizarre concept to me, but because it'll say, "Oh, that's possible." It may not be possible in the lived experience, but it's technically possible, which to me is like if it can't happen in the lived experience, it's not technically possible. But whatever, I guess we're arguing human versus AI. It, our perspective. But anyway, so in real life, you could not have two bookshelves that hold the same books, but in computing, that's a normal thing. So in computing, so right now I'm sending it a bookshelf, and the bookshelf happens to be empty. Here is another bookshelf. So as I add and remove records from here, we're going to do filtering here, and as the filtering happens, only the records that match will will show up. But to start, it's all of them. But anyways, oh crap, it's 9:05. I gotta go. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.